Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Dodge this.
Trench coats and fedoras, cigarettes and femme fatales, we are discussing Double Indemnity, the movie that set the standard for film noir. Nathaniel, when was the last crime you committed?
Oh, wow, that is...
When and what?
No. When. Okay, I won't say the last crime I committed because I don't fully remember what it was, but I will tell this really quick story. A crime I did commit, doxing myself. I don't know how many people listen, like my family, that know this. Freshman year of college, I found myself in the wrong friend group for like 3 weeks. And I was hanging out with them one day and they're like, you know what's a fun thing to do? I was like, oh, what's that? Shoplifting. And so next thing I knew, we were at the Chattanooga Mall. Did you not know this, Jeffrey?
You may have shared this with me before, but it escaped my mind.
Yeah, so I found myself at the Chattanooga Mall where you currently kind of work. And I got caught in Hot Topics trying to steal a McDonald's pen. And so that has been my one run-in with crime. I'm not good at it. I work at a
furniture store now. I'm imagining Nathaniel coming into the furniture store and trying to hide a couch behind his back.
Also, you know what your opening made me realize?
What?
Film noir made fedoras cool.
Yeah.
Band kids made fedoras lame again.
Oh, I thought it was like Reddit atheists.
Oh, there's a whole like group of people that made fedoras lame. But it's funny because fedoras is kind of like the meme hat nowadays. Like if you wear it, you get like a neck beard. But it is true. And in film noir movies, they're kind of badass.
They are. They were standard back then, but they are badass. Let's just reclaim it, right? Reclaim it from the Reddit atheists. Reclaim it from the band kids. They can just suck it as far as I'm concerned. We're going to wear them from here on out. That'll be our new uniform.
Next episode of the Holy Moment Podcast, I expect Jeffrey to be wearing a fedora. If you're fans, send us, hashtag us. I think that's what it's called on social media, with you wearing a fedora. So we can see you and we can decide, are you a badass film noir detective? Are you a lame band kid?
Last crime I committed, I am a prolific and unremorseful jaywalker. And I'll never stop.
I'm going to get in my car.
If they catch me, I'll stop.
I'm going to drive to where Jeffrey lives and I'm going to hit him with my car. I'm just going to wait outside his house, wait for him to cross the street, and then just like gun it. Just mow him down.
That'd be funny. I'd be fine with it. I give you my consent if you record it.
Beautiful. Well, you would have one thing in common with the dead person in this movie. You would have died by vehicle or in a vehicle. I guess our main guy didn't die by getting hit by a car, but he died in a car. So it's close enough.
That's right. And by main guy, we mean the main victim.
The main guy.
Main guy would be main guy. Walter Neff, played by Fred McMurray. Let's rewind a bit. Welcome to the Holy Moment Podcast, where we review movies, or we talk. What's your slogan?
I think it's Welcome to the Holy Moment Podcast, a podcast where we talk about movies, discuss the moments that work, the moments that don't, and ultimately the moments that reflect truth in unexpected ways.
Nathaniel, that was a beautiful delivery. You should do this always, but not always, because I like doing it from time to time. Maybe we should switch. Maybe we should do it where if it's I'm just describing what we already do.
Well, hear me out. When I kill you with my car, I'll just pretend to be you. And then I'll say the opening, but in my Jeffrey impersonation voice. And I'll just drive back and forth between our houses to film it.
You can't just drop that you have a Jeffrey impersonation voice and not share it to the audience.
Well, gee willikers, y'all, I'm Jeffrey Nichols. No, Jeffrey, I'm horrible at impersonations.
No, I thought that was great. I'm very much a G willikers kind of guy.
I have a pet rock. I collect nutcrackers. Do you want to have a cordial handshake game of rock, paper, scissors? Did you know there's 6 different types of mustard? There we go. That's my impersonation of Jeffrey.
The issue I take with that is that it makes me sound like the lamest person in the world, and it's true.
Also, I can't help but get out of my mind. I was listening to a podcast. I spent all today cleaning. So I was listening to a podcast for the last 8 hours, and they were doing their introduction, and they're like, gosh, we're turning into one of those podcasts where we just jerk each other off for the first 15 minutes and we don't even get to the actual content. And now I'm self-conscious. That's what we're doing. We're not even talking about movies. We're just verbally jerking it.
For sure. We wouldn't do it physically. What is the other alternative?
I was trying to keep it PG, Jeffrey. I was trying to keep it PG. Like this movie.
PG. Like this movie. And we'll talk about that later. To keep from being one of those podcast guys that jerks each other off. We will dive into the movie now.
Beautiful.
So, for those of you that aren't aware, but hopefully you've already seen the movie and are watching this afterwards, Double Indemnity is the story of an insurance salesman, right, who happens upon a beautiful dame who is married to a very wealthy oil baron. And she has certain ideas about the wealth that her husband has. Those ideas being she wants that wealth for herself. And so, together, they concoct a plan to knock the guy out, like permanently, kill him, and get away scot-free. Using his insurance expertise and her womanly wiles. He has wiles of his own. They're both very charming people, aren't they? Charming in the sense of they're very charismatic.
I found him to be really charming. I didn't really find her to be all that charming. Not like in a like I don't think she acted poorly. I think she was much more, which what she was kind of revealed to be at the end of the movie. She was much more cunning and conniving and maybe not sadistic, but I think she was more bad and evil than our main character. Granted, our main character, not a good guy, all around bad person, but I liked watching him. I liked watching Walter Neff.
Oh, for sure. And especially with how Billy Wilder writes dialogue. It's so witty and bantery. It's not banter for banter's sake, which we sometimes get in movies nowadays, like Marvel films, known for being very quippy. This is bantery, but also there's intelligence behind it. I think specifically of the interaction between Neff and Phyllis, where they're talking speed limits, right? Just an innocent conversation about, oh, am I going too fast? Well, there's a speed limit here, sir. Well, are you going to give me a ticket? What a delight to watch.
Basically was porn for the 1944 time era. Before like they were allowed to show any sex on screen. I feel like that scene was just dripping with sexual tension, and which in a good way. Like I thought it was really well done.
This movie oozes sensuality at certain points, which is so interesting because, as you mentioned, there are no graphic sex scenes in it. That just wasn't allowed for the times. And I wonder, like, how did they do that? Like, how did they accomplish making a sexy movie without making it explicit? And if that movie were remade today, could we accomplish the same thing?
It goes like all the way back to not even back forward. When did Psycho come out? We did that in October. That was
I
post.
think that came out in the 60s. And I think
Yeah.
this is post this.
Yeah, so I definitely would say Psycho definitely pushed the boundaries with what you could show, like with violence and sexual things, more than this movie. But this movie was still pushing the bounds for kind of on-screen violence and on-screen sexuality. So, like, in a long-winded way to answer your question, and doing my own like research for this movie, it was interesting. This movie took a long time to get off the ground because it had so much violence and sex in it, and they submitted it to whatever you call it, the guild, the people that basically are like, no, this isn't good enough. And there was like a funny quote, not funny, kind of cool and kind of sad where like society is nowadays, but there was a quote where basically like, hey, we think the tone and the message in which you are pushing forward with the violence and the sex is not suitable for an impressionable age. Now, again, there's obviously a difference in like people being too prudish, not wanting to show anything, and like just like covering your eyes, like, oh, there's no bad things out there. But it's also kind of refreshing for people to genuinely be like, hey, we're trying to make things that are better for society. That's neither here nor there. But I just thought that quote was interesting. But the point is, it took a while for this movie to get off the ground because of the sex and violence in it, even though if you've seen this movie, it is very, very, very tame. They basically were like, there was a woman in a towel. We thought that was too much. But thankfully, that scene still made it into the movie. But all that to be said, it is interesting that maybe this isn't Psycho, but it's still pushing the grounds for what they were allowed to show and do in 1944. And so I think that's really important for film history, from like getting from there to today. But to answer you, I think honestly, I liked how they handled this, as you said, the sexiness of the movie. They didn't have to make it super explicit. They didn't have to show graphic nudity, a graphic sex scene. But like you said, I still got the sexiness of it and the immorality of it, the smuttiness, this is a married woman. This man shows no regard that she's married. The moment he walks into her house, he's like, how can I sleep with this woman? Married? I don't like, doesn't even enter my mind. Doesn't matter. So I like that they were able to have both. You know, it wasn't just like a porno where it's like, oh, everything's just sexy, but it also wasn't just a political statement. You had like both going. But I think the way they got away with it was, like you said, the writing. This really felt like a pre-Aaron Sorkin type of writing. Witty, fast, intelligent. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was comedy for the sake of comedy. Even if things were funny, they had lots of subtext to them, and it was rapid fire, back and forth, with all the different chemistry. And so I think that's how they're able to get that sexiness was honestly through a sexy script.
Absolutely. And that's Billy Wilder for you. That's Billy Wilder. He writes tight scripts, he writes witty dialogue, and he is a master of subtext. That's where the sensuality lies, is in the subtext. And not being so explicit about things, right? And focusing on the small things. Like Neff's obsession with the anklet and her stepping out in only her bathrobe and the speeding limit dialogue. But other examples of subtext that aren't quite as sexy that were still very well done. Like his interactions with his friend, what is it?
Barton Keys.
Barton Keys. Barton Keys. I loved seeing them on screen together. I thought that they had great chemistry. I loved the almost fatherly relationship that Keys had to Neff. And I love that Keys could get away with yelling up a storm at Neff, and Neff would correctly interpret that as "I love you." And whenever he said "I love you too," it felt so genuine, so heartfelt. Like he was reading what was behind the words of his friend Keys.
It's interesting because in film school and in films in general, you get this idea of the whole idea of like show don't tell. And that's a lot of what subtext is, not like verbatim, but this idea of this conversation rather than a woman and a man saying I love you, let it be done through the way they physically move their body. Not like sex, but like the language of body movement. Let it be said through what they say that's not really saying I love you. And I feel like that's what we're taught to do in film. But then it's interesting to have a scene where, like you said, one character is ranting and raving and kind of just over the top, but then our other character is able to read the subtext, but then tells the audience. I mean, the whole thing about film, you got to know the rules so you can break them properly. And I feel like that was well done. And the other thing about film is there's no right or wrong way. You could have done it where subtextually Keys was saying like, I love you as a friend. And then, Walter could have done something back. He could have just like lit the cigarette, because there's a whole motif throughout the movie where Keys is always smoking. He never has a match. And Walter always lights the match and lights the cigar for him. That could in its own way subtextually say, I love you, I have your back. But I just thought it was interesting that they actually decided to have Walter's character almost like reverse what we know with film with subtext and actually say what this character is subtextually saying to him back at him. I love you. And I thought that was cool.
It was disarming in the best of ways. Because again, we're expecting these characters to sort of speak slyly to one another. They don't really say what they mean. But in this particular relationship, Neff knows and loves Barton Keys. And Barton Keys knows and loves Neff. Keys perhaps doesn't know him as well as he thought.
Yeah.
And that's part of the tragedy of it. But to that motif, right, of Neff constantly lighting Keys' cigarette at the very end of the movie, Neff is struggling to light his own cigarette as he's bleeding out, nearly dead. And Barton returns the favor. He lights his cigarette. It was a nice tying of a bow, setups and payoffs.
Yeah, which I love that Keys also has that reoccurring line because so Keys is a claim adjuster. So Walter he sells the insurance, but Keys he works in like claim. So when a claim comes, like, hey, I got ran over by a car, you're my insurance company, pay me. He's the guy that's like, no, 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 I know this is bullcrap. This is a scam. You're scamming me, which is so crazy because it's like in 1944, it still was prolific. The idea of like insurance scams and how insurance companies were just out to get your money. How appropriate is that for today's age, as far as like the conversation of insurance companies absolutely sucking in the 21st century? But the point is, I love that his little reoccurring thing is he's a character who likes like to have control, but he keeps having this saying of like, then I put a nice little bow on it. I figured out their BS. I put the story together. I put it in a box and I put a little ribbon on it. And I just felt like there was that physical showing at the end of the movie where he lights Walter's cigarette, kind of completing their little story arc. And I thought it was very cute and sad.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Barton Keyes, incredible character. An interesting thing too is he works in insurance and he's investigating claims. Nowadays, feels like the job of the investigator is not to prove false claims, it's to dismiss as many claims as possible. And I'm sure that was as true back then as it is now. In his case, he is a very principled man and he wants to give people their due. Like the first person that comes into his office that we see that isn't Neff is making a false claim. He is committing insurance fraud. But rather than returning, putting him to the authorities, he waives the claim and he sets the man on his way. And midway through the movie, when he's convinced that the death of Mr. Dietrichson is in fact an accident, he will not stand for his superior claiming that it was a suicide when it wasn't.
I'm really happy they did that because I feel like when we had that open, because that was kind of Key's intro scene. And the thing was, it was, I believe it was like a minority. It was very clearly like a blue collar working with his hand type of person who was trying to make a claim that his car exploded. And so I was really afraid that Key's introduction was going to be this evil person who was like traipsing on the blue collar man and he was just greedy and trying to get all the money for his insurance company. I just think it would have been it might have been more appropriate and interesting at the time of 1944, but I think in today's age it would have been just like, "Oh yeah, that's like any other character. That just makes sense. A greedy insurance person. Okay, whatever." But then I had the opposite reaction when we find out that Keyes is actually a man of principle and he's calling out this guy because this guy is making a false claim because he set his own truck on fire to get the insurance money. Then I was worried. I was like, oh man, is this like weird 1944 propaganda where it's going to be like the insurance company is always right and don't you dare try to like swindle them out of money? They're the good guys. So I'm really happy halfway through the movie, Key's boss, like you were saying, was the one who was the weasel and was like, "Oh, we can't pay $100,000 in this insurance claim. Suicide." So I'm really happy that we got both. We got the corrupt insurance person, but then we got the man of principles. And I loved watching Keyes. Very endearing character.
That moment with the boss too, especially when they bring Mrs. Dietrichson into the room, it was so well done because we're getting this sense that the boss wants to claim homicide because he's like, it's not an accident, wasn't an accident. I can prove it's not an accident. And then he drops the suicide line. No, we believe it was a suicide. But just the fact that he drops that so late in the conversation does a great job of building tension, right? We think we know what he's going to say. She thinks that she knows what he's alluding to. Neff does as well, and he's getting a bit antsy. And then, oh, it was a suicide, of course, right?
I love when she walks into the room and they make eye contact like, "Oh crap, they cannot know we know each other." And so that's again, that builds suspense because we, the characters, know, even though we don't get a voiceover, we don't get any like them pulling them into a room sidebar and like, what's going on? Like we know what's going through their minds. And so that puts us in a certain position that the other characters, Keyes and the insurance boss, don't know. And so it's fun watching these characters in this room on their edge of their seat, and it puts us, the audience, on the edge of their seat. Are they going to trip up? Are they going to be found out?
Yeah, and it's not just the writing and the performances that creates tension here. It's the blocking and the camera work throughout the movie. It contributes to this building sense of suspense. One specific scene I'm thinking of is Neff calls Phyllis. Phyllis uh, decides she's going to make her way to the apartment. He hangs up. And then all of a sudden, Barton Keyes shows up, completely unannounced. And Neff has no way of communicating with Phyllis now that Barton Keyes is here. Don't come. And so we know that there's a time crunch. We have to get Barton Keyes out of here. And all the while, Barton Keyes is starting to wise up. He's saying, I don't think this was a suicide. I don't think this was an accident either. I think this was, in fact, a homicide. I just don't have all the facts yet. And then as he's saying this, Phyllis shows up. She's outside the apartment. She's listening in. And then Barton Keyes leaves, and she hides behind the door. And then we cut to this wide where she's in frame behind the door. Neff is right in front of her, and then right next to him is Barton Keyes. And Barton Keyes is at several points moving away from the door, at several points moving towards the door. And as he moves towards the door, Walter Neff moves towards Barton Keyes to diffuse the situation. It makes me think of what Alfred Hitchcock said about creating suspense. You see a happy couple and they're talking over dinner. There's no tension there. Cut to a wide, there's a bomb under the table that none of them are aware of. That creates tension. It doesn't create tension for the characters that are not in the know, but it creates tension for the audience.
And it's great because I mean you can do so much with tension in scenes. Because like in that example you gave Jeffrey, the characters have no idea. But in this scenario, we have our character Walter quite literally a foot away from his boss Keys trying to hide Mrs. Dietrich behind the door. So we have two characters in the know. I mean, it's like the scene in The Office we were just talking about. You have two characters in the know, and then you have a character not in the know, and it makes it different. Like let's say the scene played out differently. Walter walks into the hallway of his apartment with keys, and Mrs. Dietrich is hiding behind the door, but Walter doesn't know. So now all of a sudden, the audience is screaming, "Oh, Walter, don't close the door. Don't turn around because you don't know she's there. And if you make a mistake, you're going to reveal it to now Mr. Keys." But in the scenario they have set up, we know Walter knows. It changes the dynamic in our brain of how we interpret the scene. And so, okay, we know Walter knows, so he's going to do everything he can to not reveal her. So now we're like, okay, what strategies is Walter going to take? But if Walter didn't know she was there, our attention would shift to the female, Mrs. Dietrichson. And we would go, okay, what steps is she going to take? How is she going to make sure her accomplice doesn't know? So therefore the other guy doesn't know. And so it's just these different levels of tension and different levels of setting up and scenes that you can get different outcomes of like with how your audience interacts with it, which I think is a lot of fun.
And they do this all throughout the film. There is a reason this is considered a standard setter for film noir. It's actually considered one of the greatest films of all time by a lot of people. How do you feel about that?
I really liked it. Something that the podcast is helping me do more is watch older movies and appreciate them, and not just appreciate them like this is art. I appreciate it, but I don't enjoy it. It's making me enjoy them a lot more. So I think for a movie, okay, I need to rewatch Citizen Kane. It's been a hot minute, but a lot of people's opinion, and I'm in that camp as well, is yes, it's one of the most influential import movies of all time. But the story is like ultimately watching it nowadays, it's fine. Like if you watch it from the lens of what it did for film and how it changed, then it's amazing. But if I just watch it as a movie in itself, removed from everything else, it's like mediocre. It's fine. It's pretty decent. But I actually think Double Indemnity again pushed the boundaries for a lot of things for the film noir, for like censorship, what you can show, what you can't show. Uh, put that aside, I actually still think it's a really good movie. I really thought they were able to get suspense. They were able to get like the sexiness of it without showing it. You know, there's some cheesy moments where like, okay, they very clearly couldn't show the death of Mr. Dietrichson. Like he was being strangled in the shop, but they couldn't show it actually. Which I think I wondered if they could have done it in a more interesting way. Like, granted, I don't know if they were allowed to show any of it. Like, I don't like, can you show it in silhouette? Can you do a really close tight shot on Walter's face so you get like the experience of a man murdering another man, but you don't actually see it? I don't know if they're like, we can't do any of that. We got to play it super safe, no showing it whatsoever. So there were moments where it felt a little dated in that way, but I still think they handled most of those things well enough so that it didn't feel like a super dated movie where it's like, oh, this kind of like takes the winds out of the sail because they had to shoot things a certain way. So I definitely, I'm not going to say my favorite movie of all time, but I definitely think it was really, really well done for that period, or if it was done today.
The thing is, limitations breed creativity, they breed innovation. And his death scene, Mr. Dietrichson's death scene, perhaps that could have been done more creatively. But I recently watched A Streetcar Named Desire, starring Marlon Brando. And spoiler alert for those of you that want to see this movie or read the play, actually see the movie more specifically. At the end of it, Marlon Brando's character, Stanley, ends up raping Blanche, the female protagonist of the movie. And of course, they can't show that. They can't show that on screen. But in the moment when he finally apprehends her, we see her through a mirror, and that mirror shatters. And it's a very powerful shot. It's very artistically done, but it communicates the point. He has done something that uh, will break her, and it ends up breaking her mentally.
Do you know when that came out? I'm curious about the date and censorship.
Around the same time, probably the same decade.
I feel like they probably could have gotten away with something more creative and more enticing than the shot when they showed his death. Now, granted, there is an argument to be made because what they did was, Mrs. Dietrichson was driving the car and Mr. Dietrichson was in the passenger seat and Walter is in the back and Walter reaches over and strangles Mr. Dietrichson. And we kind of just like zoom pan in on Mrs. Dietrichson's face and we just see her reaction. And so that is a good bit of storytelling. Like this woman or like her whole story is like, is she like in an abusive relationship and she's down on her luck and it's unfair. Like I'm not saying that's then you should kill someone, but like does she deserve sympathy? Or is she like a psychopath that killed Mr. Dickerson's first wife and is now killing him and she's much more cold and calculated than we originally thought. And at this point in the movie kind of halfway through, we don't know yet. It's starting to teeter more like she's a psychopath. So I do think it's interesting showing her reaction and she's very stone cold. And then we get Walter's voiceover. He's like, yeah, after we killed him, my biggest concern was she was going to break. That Phyllis was going to like start crying and not be able to console herself and go run to the cops. And he's like, she didn't bat an eye. She played her role perfectly. So I do think it's not a bad way of doing it, showing showing the inner world of this character with a close up of her face. But I do think you could have added in another shot, a creative shot of the murder.
I think that's a fair criticism, but I'm so happy that you brought up the voiceover. So, the movie opens. We are following Walter Neff as he is going into the office. It's in the middle of the night. Everyone's closing up. The janitors are doing their business. He's a bit slow in his movement. He is a bit standoffish. We don't really know what his deal is. What's he doing? He makes his way up to the claim adjuster's office, his good friend Barton Key's office, and he closes the door. He takes off his coat, revealing that he has been shot in the shoulder. And there, he takes a seat. He starts creating a voice memo, confessing his crimes and telling the whole story. And that voice memo is the frame for the entire rest of the narrative. Do you feel that the voice memo as narration was well used throughout the film? What made it work or what made it didn't, if you think it didn't?
I thought it was masterful. I think, Jeffrey and I've said this multiple times on the podcast, going back to like the Big Lebowski, how they opened the film with a voiceover. Once again, rules taught so you can break them. Again, voiceovers are in general considered cheap. Kind of how I think sometimes montages are considered cheap. Oh, how do we show this passage of time? Well, quick, just do like a really bland, boring montage. The show, they met, they fell in love, they got pregnant, they have a kid, moving on. Same with voiceovers. I think we can view it as a cheap thing because, again, there's no subtext. It's a very direct tool to give information directly to the audience, which can sometimes be seen as exposition, and exposition can sometimes be seen as bad and poor ways of writing. So I would say that's in general true. But I think there are so many examples of great montages and great voiceovers.
I'm so glad that you did not take issue with the voiceover, because if you did, then I would have thrown fists. I would have fought you on that.
I like, because when you're introducing the concept, you're like, oh, I guess you could also not like it, but you wouldn't do that, would you? No, I thought it really worked. So I wanted to lay that groundwork for traditionally they're not seen as elegant and as good as writing. But I think it really worked. The framing, specifically because he's confessing. So the voiceover isn't just exposition, but it's giving us an in-depth look at the emotional state of Walter as he's going throughout things. Because he was reflecting on it in first person in the future as we looked back and saw him falling in love with Phyllis, like talking about how they're going to do the crime, then doing the crime, then trying to get away with the crime, and how it all fell to crap in the third act. And he kind of started like going paranoid. So I thought the fact that they chose to do it as a confession and to also make it a little more textured. The fact that he got shot, the fact that he's bleeding out, and literally as the story goes on, the narration gets more chaotic and he makes a little less like sense because he's bleeding out and dying. So I thought they textured it to make it unique enough. And the lens of, again, the present tense, he could give new emotion. If we were just with Walter going linear from the moment he met Phyllis to when he died, we would have only known his mental state in that moment. But he was voicing over it, like that scene I said earlier. In the moment, Walter's not going to say, hey, you just killed your husband. It's kind of weird how calm you are. We wouldn't know he's thinking that. Like, are there ways to do it without a voiceover? Sure. But the voiceover worked that in the up-to-date storyline, he's able to reflect and say, it was really weird that she wasn't freaked out, leading to the idea that she's more like a psychopath than a woman in needing of saving. And she's more like, I kill my husband and his ex-wife, and then I want to kill his daughter, and I have no issue with it.
It imbues the story with a sense of doom as well, because we know that this story will not end happily for Walter Neff, and probably not Phyllis either. So, like, we're not watching the story of a successful crime. We are watching the story that is doomed to, like, justice is going to be met.
I mean, it's Sunset Boulevard that opens up with him in the pool, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so another classic movie that kind of has this voiceover and opens up with him voicing over like, "That's my dead body in the pool," and it creates like that same sense of dread. Also, Jeffrey, 2 episodes ago, at the end of the episode of Euros, where we spun the wheel and we got prisoners, and I was talking about film noir, and I mentioned, "Oh, isn't Sunset Boulevard a film noir movie?" And you said no. Now, granted, I very frequently call it Sunset on Boulevard, which maybe is a different movie, but I was referring to also Billy Wilder also did this, Sunset Boulevard, and that's like the most quintessential film noir movie there is.
Oh, I don't know. I think Double Indemnity beats it as far as like quintessential film noir goes. I haven't finished Sunset Boulevard.
You haven't finished it?
I haven't finished it. But here's the thing. This movie has a femme fatale. It has the moody lighting. It has its basis in crime. And that's Sunset Boulevard as well, now that I'm listing off these features. But he's investigating, or he's in. No, you're right. It's a film
It's
noir.
under,
I'm
yeah.
not going to fight it
It
anymore.
was so funny because I was very because I've only seen Sunset Boulevard once. It was in film school. I watched it. I didn't care too much about it. I was a pretty good film student, but I did not appreciate older films enough back then. I wish I had. I need to go back and rewatch a lot of the old films we watched. But Sunset Boulevard was one of them, and I don't have a great memory of it. So when Jeffrey was like, "Oh no, it's not a film noir movie," I was like, "Oh okay, yeah, sure." But today, when I was like reading the Wikipedia article about Double Indemnity, it was like, yeah, Billy Wilder, he made the 2 most famous of film noir movies ever, Sunset Boulevard and this movie. And so I was like, wait a minute. This is my chance to call Jeffrey out on the podcast? Good.
I will say, I'm glad that you called me out. And I'm also very happy to see you really appreciating and enjoying these older films and like growing to love them more and more. I can't wait to uh, see you recommend several black and whites for different categories in the future. And you've done that before, but like, I don't know. It's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it is true that I have not recommended very many because On the Waterfront was you, 12 Angry Men was you, this one was you, Macbeth was you, which was not an old movie, but it was a black and white movie. So the only black and white movie I think I've suggested was for our very first season where we had the category black and white. And I don't even remember what I suggested. Do you?
Yours was that it was a coming of age story about an uncle and
No,
his,
that was Vegas. That was
his
Come On, Come
nephew.
On.
That was
That was
Vegas. That was
Vegas.
come on, come on.
Huh. Yeah, I don't. Do you remember what your black was that? Because Macbeth was season 2. Anyways, doesn't matter. I'm just trying to reminisce and prove that I have bad memory. But the point is, I appreciate that you're helping me have a love for older films.
Hey, I think it's easy, and I had this thought growing up to think that older films are hokey and cheap because surely we've progressed so far beyond them. But then you watch these movies and you see the subject matter they're dealing with, and you see the camera work and the blocking and the writing, and you go, "Oh, that is just as much art as what's being put out today, if not more."
And I love that it's a time capsule of that period. Like we're talking about, it's a time capsule into what politically and kind of morally could they show with like sex and violence and all these different areas of film. It's also a time period to like what themes and stories and messages was important to them. Obviously, if you go far enough back, you have a bunch of war movies because of World War One and World War Two. And so it's just it's fun. Like I like just watching movies for the story. And you can watch an older movie and just appreciate for the story. But it's also like a history lesson. Like you can learn what society was going through. And I can imagine in another 50, 70, 100 years, when they watch movies from our time period, they'll be able to like, wow, look at what Americans were I don't want to say idolizing, but look what was important to Americans in the 21st century when all these movies came out. And so I think it's just a cool thing. And it definitely makes you grow as a filmmaker, but I also think just like as a person. Like if you just want to know more about history, movies are a time capsule, a physical, visual time capsule of that time period.
It also helps us realize that the people of the past were not aliens. They're human. They're just as human as we are. They had the same feelings of fear and hope and love that we have. And they were in a different historical context that shaped how they went about experiencing these feelings, but they're the same at their core. And so a story that's powerful then is going to be a story that's powerful now.
Yeah, I mean, they're really relatable characters. Like I can't tell you how many times I walk into a random woman's home and go, well, maybe she has a husband, but I'm going to sleep with her. Completely kidding. But I did find
Exactly.
that funny.
I can't count the number of times that I've been an insurance adjuster.
And was really into people's ankles. That anklet.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Mm.
I love the dynamic between Walter and Phyllis because you get in my opinion, I get from the beginning that Walter, I don't know about love, but Walter was like, yeah, this woman's pretty cool and dangerous. I'm all for her. Walter does get more enamored with the love side. And I like that Phyllis, in my opinion, you could tell. She was not in love with Walter. She was not like, oh my goodness, I'm in an abusive relationship with an old man and this hot young striped man came into my life. She was conniving from the beginning. And you could tell she was more cold and calculated than Walter was. And I love the reversal. So often it's the man. He's cold, he's calculated, he's going to get what he's wanting, he's going to use the woman and then dump her. And it's the woman, ooh, what a hot man. Yay. So I really like the reversals of these roles, like the gender stereotypes.
Yeah, for sure. And she notices that he is into him and uses that against him. And he is very competent at what he does. Like he is a very logical, reasonable man who is very detail oriented, and that's how he's able to execute the plot as far as they were able to. But he falls victim to passion. Something that I've noticed the movies, the film noir that we have reviewed on this channel. There's Prisoners, there is Double Indemnity, and I think Memento could count as a neo noir as well. We've got an insurance investigator who is trying to uncover a crime. It's very hard boiled. We have a femme fatale, someone who presents as being benevolent and ends up being very evil, right? Evil's a hard word, complex, but erring on the side of not a good person. Um, and a common thread between these three movies, we have a protagonist that is presented as hyper competent from the jump. And then we see how throughout the film, their competency gets unraveled or deconstructed. They are not as capable as they thought they were. In this movie, he is very detail oriented. He's the best insurance salesman in the business, and he knows the industry in and out. But it gets to him eventually. Barton Keyes is able to track him down. He falls victim to Phyllis's womanly wiles, and I don't say that in like a sexist way, but she was playing him like a fiddle. In Prisoners, the main character, Keller, one of the main characters, prides himself on being self-sufficient, ready for any circumstance. Something happens that he's not prepared for, and he goes off the rails. Memento, we've got this insurance investigator. He's trying to find out who killed his wife. He has this condition, a memory condition, but he has found ways to cope effectively. At least we're led to believe. Spoiler alert, he is a hot mess mentally, and he does not have it together as much as he believes he does. And so I wonder if that's a common thread between all film noirs. I wonder if that's a theme that we can spot when we watch other noirs from the 40s or the 70s or present day.
Well, it's interesting because I think I don't have a large, vast knowledge of film noirs. It's a genre that I'm kind of new to. But something that's fascinating is Prisoners. That's the most kind of stereotypical, not stereotypical. It's the most stereotypical in the sense that we are following the victims. We have the victim, Keller Dover, his child's kidnapped. And then we have the detective trying to chase them down. Like as the movie goes on, we get more from the bad guys, but it's mostly from the victims and the detective's point of view. Okay, then you have Memento. which is weirdly from the point of view of both the victim and the aggressor. Because again, our main character is so messed up and has this memory issue that he's simultaneously the victim, but also the person doing bad things. He doesn't realize it. But then you have double indemnity. And what I'm curious about what you're asking of like how common is it with this trope of these characters thinking that they have it all together, but they don't. I'm also curious, do film noirs usually come from the perspective of the victim, the detective, or the aggressor? Because again, all three movies were from different perspectives. And with obviously double indemnity being from the bad guy, the murderer. Like uh, Walter killed Mr. Dietrichson, and we follow his story through and through. He is our main character, and we have his friend Keys playing the pseudo detective, which I thought was a great flip on the script of rather than it being a detective where he's a claims adjuster who's like doing more police work than the police ever could. But that's also just like another. So I'm not really answering your question. I'm more answering a question with a question because I don't know the answer to yours. Do you have any insight? Like, do you know which perspective we usually follow in film noir? Or is the whole thing like with film noir, it's often multiple perspectives. Like you get the detective chasing the bad guy, but then you also get to watch the bad guy.
Something I learned in my research is the standard stereotype of it's always about a detective or a private eye. You always have the femme fatale. A lot of noirs have neither of those. In fact, perhaps even most noirs have neither tropes in it. Um, but a consistent through line is morally gray characters. And so even when we have the private eye or the detective, they're often still self serving or slightly corrupt. Right. And maybe they're effective at their jobs, but they're willing to do things that cross lines that quote unquote good cops, good detectives wouldn't be willing to do.
Well, and maybe that's like a theme, a story of a backbone of a film noir, because another big theme in film noir is the idea of showing the underbelly. It's more not narcissistic, nihilistic. It is showing the worst of humanity. Again, Walter and Phyllis are bad people through and through. Walter never showed any remorse. He started to get paranoid that he's going to get caught. And I love the whole Keys had this metaphor, you know, when people commit crimes together, it's like they're getting on a train together, and the only stop is the cemetery. And Walter's like, hell nah, bro, I'm getting off at the next stop, and Phyllis is going to the cemetery. But like he never has any remorse. As soon as he feels like, oh no, I'm going to get caught, he doesn't feel remorse. He decides, well, I'm going to go kill Phyllis, and I'll wipe my hands of it. Like it's like getting your hand caught in the cookie jar. You feel embarrassed, you don't feel bad, you feel embarrassed. But instead of a cookie jar, he got his hand caught in murder and he doesn't feel bad. He just feels like, "Ooh, this would suck if I went to jail. How do I get out of it?" So the point being, film noir has these complicated characters that usually see the worst in people and have the worst outlooks on life. And so I'm wondering if that through line of these characters thinking they're more competent than we find out that we don't is kind of like the silver lining on it. So instead of being completely nihilistic and bad, it's like these characters who are bad people think that they're doing what's right or think they're above the law or think that they won't get caught. And then they end up not being so self-sufficient with all the examples you gave previously with our three main characters from those three noir movies we watched. They all ended up being kind of their own undoing, going to show having this nihilistic, being a sociopath, kind of having this more gray outlook on life, maybe doesn't lead to a very fruitful life. So that's interesting. Like when you're writing a film noir, if you need a little bit of like that justice to kind of counteract that nihilistic viewpoint.
Yeah, I think that that is often a great ingredient to add to film noir. I watched the movie Chinatown that came out in the 70s with Jack Nicholson. That's a neo noir. And that ends on a very nihilistic note. No sense of justice. And so I guess it depends on the values of the director and what they want to convey with this story. But speaking of morally gray characters, Fred McMurray plays Walter Neff. And I guarantee you, you have seen at least two movies with him in it.
Because he's in the apartment. And then
Yes,
what else is he in?
this one. Those are the two I was.
Oh, I thought you meant two other movies. I was like, is he 12 Angry Men? Oh, okay. So I've seen two movies.
And what's common between them is Fred McMurray is playing a scumbag in Double Indemnity. He plays a scumbag in The Apartment. But Billy Wilder's use of Fred McMurray was not typical for how Fred McMurray was used in other films at the time. He was known as playing the thoughtful, decent, nice guy in a lot of movies. And so whenever he was working with Billy Wilder had him playing against type. And those actually ended up being the performance that he's like most known for, Double Indemnity in particular. And those were the performances he was most proud of. And so I wonder, what is the value or power of playing an actor against type? And what are the potential hurdles that one can encounter?
Well, my mind immediately goes to the interview quote that I've quoted a few times on this podcast with the actor Christopher Waltz, I believe. Yeah, Christopher Waltz, who plays the Nazi commander in *Inglourious Bastards*, and he's in this interview, and they're like, because did did he win the Oscar for Best Actor or Best Supporting Actor? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know.
He better. If he didn't, I'm going to rage like I did last week when I found out that Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal didn't win an Oscar for their work in Prisoners. But besides the point. But he's widely praised for that role and being this amazing evil bad guy, kind of a quintessential bad guy. And in the interview, they're asking him like, how did you become such an evil bad person? And, he gives the answer of like, well, I wasn't. To that Nazi soldier, he didn't wake up thinking I'm an evil person who's going to go kill Jews. He woke up thinking I'm a great person going to go kill Jews. Like it just you don't think you're a bad person usually. And so that's how he played him. And it's what made him so unsettling. So I think what specifically worked with the actor Fred McMurray was him still playing his charming, likable self, but with the new subtext and also context of him being a bad person. Because ultimately, Walter Neff was charismatic. He was charming. He was delightful. I wanted to be his friend. I really, really enjoyed him. And I think that was Fred McMurray bringing the background of playing a really nice, lovable guy. But then when you start to see, oh, he's like willing to commit adultery like that at the drop of a hat. He's willing to commit murder with very little convincing on Phyllis's side. As soon as it goes belly up, he is like going to kill Phyllis and not going to feel bad about it, all while having a very charming, charismatic personality. And not charismatic in like a cult leader, but charismatic in like he's just a nice guy. Seems like a nice guy. He's not a nice guy, but he has like if my daughter brought that man home, I would be happy type of vibe. He seems like he's self-sufficient. Seems like he has a good head on his shoulders. He seems respectable. And so I think immediately that juxtaposition, playing against your stereotypical character, is cool. Like I think the immediate example I could give that is the most black and white is if you take someone like Jack Black. Imagine taking someone like Jack Black and having him play his normal campy over the top self, but then putting him in like like a through and through drama, putting him in a horror. It's going to change it, but at the same time, his background in acting out that kind of stereotypical character he normally does can create a juxtaposition that's interesting to watch.
I think the most obvious example of a contemporary actor that made the switch is Adam Sandler, known for his comedy movies. And then we watched Punk Drunk Love for one of our seasons of the Holy Moment podcast. And that was a great departure from everything that I had seen him in. And that's another power of playing an actor against their usual type, is it plays with audience expectations, right? We come in thinking we're getting a standard Adam Sandler movie, and then we see him in this context that we would never have imagined him in. And it's shocking, right? But it's also intriguing.
Yeah. And I think it takes a great director because going off that example of Punch Drunk Love, Paul Thomas Anderson went on quote, like the directors and producers thought he was crazy. Like when he got greenlit for the script and they're like, hey, who do you want to cast? And he's like, I want it to be Adam Sandler. They're like, what are you talking about? This is like a drama of a depressed guy, not Adam Sandler with his, longest yard. But he said, I see it in him and he pushed for it. And I think having Adam Sandler made all the difference in the world. And again, you have amazing actors who don't play any archetypical characters and they can play a funny guy. They can play a depressed guy. They can play an action guy. But when you take someone like Adam Sandler, who is so recognizable, and in Punch Drunk Love, it's still funny. But his humor is no longer absurdist humor. It's humor that is driven by a deep, deep depression of a man. And that made the movie so much better. So I think, and obviously casting as well, like the casting directors, but I think it falls heavily on the director to be able to take a character who falls into an archetype and play them against it and it work out. Because I think you could do it and it'd just be a flop as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. But I do wonder if you're seeing an actor in a context in a story that you're not used to seeing them in. Is it possible for it to be jarring in a bad way? What are the potential pitfalls and obstacles to casting an actor against their type? What are the potential downsides?
I mean, absolutely. You don't actually have to look any further than this movie. The actress who played Phyllis, our psychopathic murderous housewife, Barbara Stanwyck, she was afraid to take the role because up until now she had played the heroism, the woman to fall in love with, the hero. She played a clean cut good person. And she was afraid that the image that the production companies had crafted for her and that she had crafted for herself was going to be tainted by playing this very morally, not a morally great, bad person. Phyllis was a bad person. And so I feel like you see all the time actors are trying to protect their image with what roles they take on. And I just find that very interesting. Like like how actors will often want to be like, well, I don't want to play this type of character because not in the sense of like I mean, maybe there are some characters you want to play because, like, that's a horrible person. I want to be associated with them. But I think it's a little more like, oh, if I play this, I'm going to get pigeonholed into this type of like acting and yada yada. Like, I know a lot of people with Marvel, like, actors can sometimes regret doing it because they're like, oh man, now I'm just known as the Marvel actor, which is great. Like, I love my Marvel experience, but I want to like now go to indie films. I want to go to something more, a little more meat and potatoes with the writing and the directing, but they have a hard time escaping it. So I feel sorry, I kind of went on a rant. I don't remember exactly your original question, but I do feel actors will sometimes also put themselves into archetypal characters or will specifically try to avoid it because they don't want to fall into any specific archetypical character. Like you could have one or the other.
Yeah. Well, I know The Rock for a while had in his contract that he couldn't lose a fight. And so that's another example of an actor very carefully curating their image on screen and how that can sometimes detract from the art. I don't know if he still has that in his contract or even if that's true. That might just be one of those internet facts that you read and there's actually no basis to it, or maybe the basis is so minuscule.
But things like that are true sometimes, and I do think it creates for like one note characters. Not only just one note characters, but when that actor is in a movie, they feel like the same actor. They seem like the same character. They are the same actor. They feel like the same character, and it makes the movie less interesting. And I think that was your original question. Have you ever seen an actor in a movie that they shouldn't have been in and it felt jarring in a negative way? And I do think so again, because I think if actors so carefully curate their image and then they try and get out of the image they created for themselves, it can be jarring. And again, I think it comes down to how the director uses them. Because I'm sure with Adam Sandler, if he kind of played it his normal hicks and gucks and laughs and giggles, it would have been super weird tone for that movie Punch Drunk Love, and it would have been bad.
And it's also a matter of finding an actor who, even if they've played a certain character consistently throughout their career, they still have the range to go beyond it, even if that hasn't been recognized. There are some actors that they play one kind of character, and that's kind of all they're good at. And that might just be that they're not challenging themselves consistently enough. But it is a balancing act when you're a casting director. Like, you have to be able to find those actors if you want to play them against type that have the range. It might seem interesting on the surface to cast them just because they're different, just because it's a change. But if they don't have the chops to back it up, might lead to an awkward product.
Yeah. And you gotta love when an actor breaks out of the mold of what they normally do. And I think just last year with the Smashing, what was the Rock's movie? The Smashing something?
The Smashing, I
The
heard
Smashing
great things
Machine.
about that. I want to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was I don't know if it's like The Rock's first like drama, but I think it's his first really dramatic role, really heavily acted, less I mean still an action movie, but less like campy action, kind of big explosion action and more of like a drama piece. And I heard it was really well received. So you love it when you see actors push themselves and break out of the mold and grow as an actor. I think that's really fun to watch. It's kind of one of the reasons why I don't like again, it's just boring when an actor is one type of movie, but I actually really don't like comedian actors for that reason because they often feel like the same character and it can become grating. I don't like Kevin Hart that much. I don't like Jack Black that much. And those type of actors just can grind my gears and just kind of wear me down after a while.
Sometimes they're not acting, so much as they are playing themselves. And when you're performing, when you're acting, you want to take bits and pieces of yourself and imbue it into the performance so that the performance can be truthful. But it can be difficult to do that, right? To find what is true of me concerning this character that is so radically different from myself. All right, here's a question for you. Phyllis, at the end of the movie, she's shot Walter Neff and he stumbles towards her and she falls into his arms and she confesses that she loves him and she loves him now for the very first time because she's never loved anyone before. Was this just a play to get more time, or do you feel that she was being genuine? And how do you feel about the way that her story ended?
I don't think it's either. I do not think she was playing for more time. Like at that point, shoot him in the head and run away. What does talking to him more get her? And then I do not think she loved him. What I think it was, I think Phyllis was a very greedy, self-centered, I deserve the world, I'm down on my luck type of character. It's never officially revealed, but it's heavily speculated in the movie that Phyllis killed the original Mrs. Dietrichson. She was the nurse. Mrs. Dietrichson was very sick. She was her nurse. And it's believed, because it was kind of witnessed by the younger daughter at the time, Lola, that Phyllis killed her. And it's presumed that she probably, like, kind of like she's a character, the grass is always greener on the other side. She was probably this nurse to this woman who was married to at the time, a powerful man who would have been younger, so probably more attractive. And she said, you know what? I deserve that. Why can't I have it? Kills the wife. Gets married to this man. He's not making as much money as she thought. He's not as attractive as she thought. But also, I will say, he's a dick. He's a very chauvinistic, and he's also a very misogynistic man. So, like, he's not a good person. But at the end of the day, she once again decides, you know what? I deserve better. A young, attractive looking man who agrees to help kill her husband comes along. I don't think she was ever in love with him, but she's always looking for the grass is greener. The greed gets in her way. I deserve this better life. And I'm going to jump to it. I'm going to jump ship. I'm going to destroy every ship I jump to. And then as soon as it starts sinking, because I'm not putting in the effort to keep it afloat, I'm going to jump to the next one. So I think in that moment, she felt what she thought was love. But then the day, it was probably just infatuation and a greed of, I want you to myself. I don't think she loved Walter at all.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I guess that's what I was wondering is, was she being truthful? Was she speaking what she believed was the reality of her inner state?
I would say so. She seems like the type of character that is cold and manipulative, but not like her internal world, her thought process is so messed up, but she believes it to be true. So I think she believed that she loved Walter, but really all she wanted was the next nice, shiny thing. So it's not like she was necessarily like, okay, I'm going to tell Walter I love him because I'm going to manipulate him. But it also wasn't like she actually loved Walter. I think she like convinced herself she did, but really all she wanted was the next thing. And after, if her and Walter did escape, if they did get over to Mexico and with the money, I think Walter would have been dead within a year or two, and she would have moved on to the next thing.
When she shot him the first time, that's when the switch clicked for her. When she realized, oh, I think I love this guy. What about that moment activated that switch?
It's a good question. Yeah, because leading up to the scene, talking about tensions, we see her ready to presumably kill Walter. She knows Walter's coming over. She gets a gun. She puts it underneath the cushion, waiting for him to come over. So we get the idea she's not messing around. She's calm. She's collective. Like Walter said himself, she handled killing her husband perfectly fine. What's another man? So to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't think it didn't. I don't like the idea that she shot him and then like it all hit her at once. Oh my goodness, what am I doing? This is a bad thing. I shouldn't be doing this. Or oh my goodness, I really do love you. I wonder if it was more like a control thing of, hey, I'm going to shoot you in the shoulder. I'm going to show you I mean business. So just listen to me. I love you. Let's get out of here. Let's do it my way. I want everything. I'm not saying, again, I don't think she was a cold, precise, calculable, manipulative person. Like, okay, that's how I'm going to play it off. I think she was a very emotional person. I think she was like a psychopathic person who was also emotional, which I think is maybe a contradiction. But I think she was like cold, but also like had feelings. So as soon as she shot him, she was probably overwhelmed in the sense of like, no, wait, I love you. And so I guess that's like the best answer I have, but I don't know. Do you have anything better?
I don't know. Do you feel that it could be how he handled being shot, him taking steps forward and almost egging her on? Was there something about that that she felt drawn to, or maybe in him taking those steps and daring her, she gained a respect for him that she did not have before?
That's a good. The only thing I thought in that scene was like, dang, Walter Neff is either a badass or doesn't care if he lives. Like it is true. He's either stupid or he knows she's not going to shoot him because she shoots him in the shoulder and he like doesn't flinch. He's like, "Oh, well that sucks." And then he's like, "You're not going to do it again." And then he closes the gap. She could have killed him 100 times over. Again, if this was a different movie, it would have felt like she's the damsel in distress. She doesn't know how to handle a gun. She really is in love with him. She just made a mistake. He's the big, powerful man. He's going to walk up and say, "Stop that." She's like, "You're right." I hate that. I think that's way less interesting of a story. And so I really don't want it to be that. But to be honest with you, I was in that moment confused. And it was one of the moments in the movie that I thought was less clear and well acted. It was nuanced, but so nuanced that I didn't know where a character stood.
Yeah, I would say I have a lot of questions about that scene myself. And it is a question of, is that poor filmmaking or is that leaving it for the audience to debate over? I mean, we're having fruitful conversation about it right now. At what point do we say this scene worked or this scene didn't?
Yeah. I think ultimately for me, since we're discussing it and we're not able to draw any conclusions, either this is obviously what it was, or I think this is what it was. I think it was a little bit poorly done. Because I think Phyllis' character was very interesting. Again, she wasn't one note, she wasn't stereotypical, but in the end, did she give in to an emotion? And if so, why? And then I appreciate that Walter was a little more like I guess I wished it was the opposite. Walter became very cold and very like, "I'm going to kill you." And then at the very last minute, she was all like, "I love you," which almost seemed the opposite of the thing they were doing the entire time. I actually thought it would have been really interesting if she stayed cold and calculated and he stayed kind of more emotional. And either he somehow gained the upper hand and then killed her, or she killed him and she lived, or then she got caught. I thought that just would have been more interesting.
I think that's fair. I think that would have been an interesting route for them to take. Something that I liked though is during that period where they were supposed to keep distance from one another, ideas were being planted in his head that she is not who she said that she was. She's not who I thought that she was. She has victimized this innocent teenage girl, Lola Dietrichson. She very ruthlessly killed Lola's mom. And if she can use people in this way, perhaps I'm just another tool. She's talking to that Nino guy. And so it makes sense to me that he's gradually steeling himself against her and getting wise to her tricks.
That also makes me think, going back to the bigger picture of film noir, it's interesting. I didn't think too much about it with this movie, Double Indemnity, because I do often think with older films, and then again, maybe I'm talking out of my butt because I haven't seen enough, but I do feel with older films, things are usually more close-ended. They're not left for open for decision making. This is the story, beginning, middle, end, first, second, third act. Here you go. Nothing wrong with that. I love a good, just classically structured movie. But now that we're talking about it, it is true that they were playing with, like they did with Memento and like they did with Prisoners, this idea of perspective. And they never actually gave us answers. Lola was the one that planted the idea in Walter's mind that Phyllis is crazy and killed her mom. Ultimately, Lola hated Phyllis. Like we're presented that Lola is this pretty nice girl, but at the end of the day, we were never proven. What if Phyllis really wasn't great? I mean, bad person again, still killed a person, but she really was like Lola was out to get me. Lola painted me in this way that I really wasn't, and I'm being driven down this road that is making me more psychotic. And it's same with Prisoners. Our main Keller Dover kidnaps the person he believes to kidnapped his children and tortures them with misinformation. So often we're operating in these movies, especially with Memento, without the full picture. Either people are lied to, or they don't have the whole information, or they're just working off of their own information. And so that's another interesting thing about film noir is that people make actions on very murky decisions, and we don't, as an audience, always get the clear cut, well, this is actually what happened. And I guess I didn't realize while watching this movie that there was a lot left to the open of, was Lola lying? Was Walter lying? Was Phyllis lying? Who was technically the bad person in all of this? And again, being film noir, they all were sucky in their own right. Besides Keys. Keys was a brilliant, great man.
And Lola was a teenager.
But was she a lying teenager?
I suppose that's the question. Nino, he was a jerk.
Yeah. I don't know why he was in the movie.
I think it was just a further arrow in the quiver that was supplied to Neff. What is this analogy?
You're an elf. You're about to go shoot something.
Yeah, I think it was just further proof for Neff that Phyllis was not to be trusted.
That's fair. I guess I just thought his acting was a bit strong. He felt a bit, I'm a young punk kid who's like 38 or something. He was like weirdly old.
It also gave Neff an out at the end to say that Phyllis and Nino Zacchetti were the true perpetrators of this crime. And we would have missed out on that really cool moment that you referred to of, hey, we're not getting off on this trolley car together. You're getting off at the last stop and I'm getting off at the corner.
And that makes me last kind of thing on this note, but like maybe another thing this movie is trying to show is maybe Walter and Phyllis aren't psychopaths. They're not good people, but again, maybe what's worse? What's more underbelly of human and nihilistic? That two psychopaths band together and kill someone, or that two humans band together and kill someone? Because at the end of the day, what happens? Well, for whatever reason, Phyllis falters and can't kill Walter. What happens next? Walter has the perfect moment to pin the crime on Nino. Nino is about to show up to the house where Phyllis is going to be found dead. The police already suspect Nino of killing Mr. Dietrichson. But, and Nino's walking, he's opening the door. And Walter's standing, hiding behind some shrubs. And he stops him and he says, no, don't go in there. Just go be with Lola. She loves you. So at the end of the day, they both have a turn of heart. And so maybe this story is less about psychopaths killing people and more about like what small things can slowly turn into a big avalanche in the human psyche and mind. What has to happen for murder to take place? What happens to happen for adultery to take place? Because these aren't psychopaths. And maybe at the end of the day, they just found themselves at the end of the trolley and they didn't want to go to jail. They didn't want to die. Who wants to die? Who wants to go to jail? But they had to pay for their crimes. And so maybe the little bit of light at their tunnel was both of them at the end of the day didn't repent. They never said sorry, but they didn't burn everyone around them even worse. They didn't pin it on Nino. They didn't just kill Walter. They didn't just run to New Mexico. I mean, granted, Walter tried.
I love the line. It's like they moved the elevator several miles away. I mean, that's what makes Walter Neff so interesting is that he's not a psychopath. That throughout the film, there are small nuggets of sympathy that he affords other characters, like Lola. And you can tell that these things are weighing on his conscience. Like he can't hear his footsteps. These are the footsteps of a dead man, but he's gone and done the deed and he has to commit now.
And again, I think that's what film noir does best. It turns the lens inward on ourselves of humanity, and we have to ask ourselves, how much of humanity is monsters because we are evil beings, or how much of humanity is bad because of the choices we make? It's just film noir as a category, I think, is very specifically self-reflective of like the human condition. And again, you can take it on a very negative nihilistic standpoint, but you could also take it on like just a reflective of like what has to happen in order for people to keep committing atrocities and to be evil. Most people aren't born evil. Something happens in their lives, they make certain decisions, and it slowly rolls down until it ends with murder, ends with adultery, ends with something horrible.
Film noir, it asks us to see how much of ourselves is in Walter Neff, how much of Walter Neff is in us.
Well, I'm not a insurance salesmanship, so not that much.
Yeah, I guess we've got nothing to learn from this then.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have reached the end of our podcast, unless there is more to be said, in which case feel free to interrupt me. But we have reached the end of our podcast.
I guess the only thing I'll interrupt you with is, I've enjoyed being very serious about this movie because it's not a goofy movie. It's an important movie. It's a good movie. But something that I do want to riff on for just half a second. Walter claimed. Walter was like, if we're going to do this by the books, we're going to do it straight. We're going to make sure there's no loose ends. This is going to be the tightest, most alibi driven crime ever committed. Because a through line of the whole movie was like, anyone that ever tries to get away with insurance fraud by killing someone with a life policy always gets caught. But I know better. And again, the whole idea of someone knowing better but not. But his whole great plan was, I'm going to snap a dude's neck by strangling him to death with my hands and then like toss him off a train going 10 miles an hour. That won't be suspicious. They can't tell the difference of bruising on someone's neck and the snapping of someone's neck via train. I was like, that just doesn't seem very concrete.
Yeah. Well, I will say forensic science had not developed nearly as much as it has now. And so I feel like there's
Surely.
less that they could have learned maybe from autopsies.
Yeah, I get. It is true that it was a long time ago, so I'm not expecting like they're gonna be like, oh look, we found some residue on his skin that's the same as Walter, but surely you could tell when someone's hands and fingers have left imprints and bruising around someone's neck like they were strangled. So I just thought that
Well,
was funny.
we didn't see it either, so maybe he used some other instrument to strangle him. Maybe it was strangled with a towel or something.
But I still think that'd leave like a line, you know?
Yeah.
I don't look a lot
Yeah.
of dead bodies, but I just feel like unless he was like a ninja from a movie and did a quick snapping of the neck. But I don't think that's super easy or that's what he did. So I just thought that was fun. Also, the other thing I wanted to say way back earlier on, we were talking about tension within shots in the blocking. Probably my favorite part, well, not my favorite part of the movie, but the part that got me most exhilarated and nervous was the scene where Phyllis walks Mr. Dickerson, her husband, to the car. She gets in, she gets in the passenger seat. They're driving to the train, and we pan back and we just see Walter crunched in the back of the trunk. And it was just such a gut wrenching moment of like knowing what was about to happen. And there's a few reasons because, again, we didn't see the violence. So it wasn't like anything we haven't seen in movies before. But I felt like I was watching an innocent man about to kill another innocent man. And I felt the tension of Walter. Not a good dude. We've set it up to this point, but here's the precipice. He is not a murderer. Arguably, as far as we know, he's not done anything crazy criminal wise in his life. And now he was hiding in the back of someone's car the moment before he's about to strike. And I was just on the edge of my seat in that moment with how they shot it. We see Walter in the back, we see Phyllis in this and the camera left, we see Mr. Dickerson camera right in the front seat. I really like that shot.
We feel like an accomplice to the crime.
Yeah, very voyeuristic watching in on it.
That is an excellent point, and I'm very happy you interrupted me. Um, but now, folks, is the moment of moments. Some might even call it the holy moment.
Holy moment.
Nathaniel, what is your holy moment for Double Indemnity?
Oh, good. I'm happy we get to talk about this holy moment because it's something we didn't talk a lot about in the podcast. My holy moment was the character of Keys. I loved his interaction with Walter. We talked a lot about Walter and Phyllis, and I really enjoyed Walter and Phyllis, but the chemistry of Walters and Keys was mesmerizing. It was so fun. I love that Keys was this older, short, pudgy looking dude that, he wanted justice. He was a man of principle. And Walter was this more attractive young guy, and they have a great like friendship slash mentorship. You loved watching it growing, and then you hated to watch and realize Walter is the killer, and Keys is like his best friend, and he doesn't know it. And I love their chemistry. And then by the end, where Keys is the one holding Walter in his hands, lighting his cigar right before he dies. And so I never really seen a chemistry like that. And again, I love that they subverted the expectations of a normal film noir with a detective. And instead of a detective, we get an insurance claimer. I thought that was super funny. And so just all those things worked for me for Keys. Anytime it was on the screen, I was elated.
And you always got the sense that the affection these two men shared for each other was real. And even at the end, when Barton Keyes had been betrayed by Walter Neff, that affection was still there. The hurt was there, but there was still love. And how he talked to Neff and how he lit his cigarette. That last line when Walter Neff says, hey, like it must have been a kick in the head uh, to find out that the murderer was the guy sitting right across from you, that close. And then Barton Keyes says, even closer. In response, but Walter smiles and he says, I love you too.
Really endearing. And so I just think their chemistry and then yeah, specifically Keys was just so fun to watch. So well done. So everything that I was hoping it wasn't going to be, it wasn't. Again, he wasn't the greedy insurance claimer trying to get all the money. He was a man of principle. He was kind ultimately. He wanted justice. And even when he found out that justice meant his close friend was going to jail or probably going to die here, he like you said, there was sternness in his voice when he confronted Walter at the end. You could tell he wasn't going to let him off, but you could also tell like I don't hate you. How dare you betray me? There was sadness. This man was my friend. There was goodness in him, and he's fallen. And it's a sad day for humanity. But justice has to be prevailed, and you'll have to serve time or die here.
Very good holy moment, Nathaniel. And Barton Keyes, he was a favorite of mine too. I know we didn't talk about him a lot because most of the screen time was handling Phyllis and Walter's story, but he was a highlight. My holy moment, I'm just going to give it to the dialogue in general. Just how Billy Wilder writes dialogue. It's so engaging and it's so witty and intelligent. And the banter feels real, but it also moves the story forward. And I would say his writing in general is like that. It's very efficient. Everything feels purposeful. Billy Wilder was an artist, a craftsman, and Double Indemnity demonstrated that to the max.
I fully agree. I think that's the thing that drew me in originally. It was the dialogue, it was the banter, or even just the monologue or the narration of Walter at the beginning. Just all of it was captivating through and through. So I fully agree with you.
But with that being said, what are you going to give this?
Ooh, I'm gonna give it a 3.75. Yeah,
Really?
yeah, yeah, that's pretty
I'm going to
high.
give it yeah, I'm going to give it a solid 4.4.
Yeah, it's been a while since you've ranked a movie higher than me. Good, good. Yeah, yeah, I'd give it a 3.8. I enjoyed myself, but I also felt like it had a lot to say. It was also made so well, and I feel like I'd watch it again, which is it's pretty uncommon for me. So I'm gonna get 3.8. Really good movie. Out of 5, everyone. Everyone's like out of 10. These are horrible rankings.
I just love Billy Wilder, and I'm so enamored with the things that he's come out with. I mean, I've only seen two, but boy, have I been impressed.
I added after this movie, I added like 4 of his most famous movies to my Letterboxd watch list. So definitely will have to do more for the podcast. I feel like this season's been full of banger after banger. I feel like we've had some really good movies in this season.
Me too. I'm really excited to see what the future brings.
Yeah. Well, speaking of what the future brings, I do believe it's time to spin a wheel,
Yeah,
if I may do so, co-host.
wheel it up. Let's do it. Pull that wheel up.
Woo! Okay, guys, for those who don't know, we pick 6 categories every season. Jeffrey has 6 movies. I have 6 movies. That's 12 movies. We alternate who's hosting. So at the end of every episode, we spin a wheel depending on who's hosting. So Jeffrey hosted this time because it was his movie. Now I'm going to spin a wheel. I'm going to host next week. On and on and on. I got 4 categories left / 4 movies. We have Sky High, the Disney movie. We have Hammett and The Train to Busan and Emmanuel, which is a documentary. Jeffrey, out of those 4, what are you wanting to watch most next week? What are you yearning for?
Either Hamnet or Sky High. I think Sky High would be very fun.
I don't disagree. Part of me's almost hoping that Sky High makes it to the season finale at this point. It's made it almost halfway. Um, I'm pretty open. I'm pretty open for any of these. So without further ado, I've clicked the button. It's spinning, and we're going to be watching. Very good, very good. The Train to Busan. So I'm excited. This has been one of the ones that I have wanted to watch since the very beginning of doing this podcast. A movie I've been trying to watch forever. There's actually a funny little story relating to my wedding about this movie. And there's zombies, and there's a train, and it's Asian. All things that I love. So super excited to watch this next week. So again, if you love films, go watch this, everyone. The return next Wednesday when we release the episode, and listen to our thoughts on The Train to Busan. Also, before I forget, this is for category wildcard. So one of the categories we do every season is wild card. Basically, pick whatever movie you want to watch. So that's the category.
Super exciting. Train to Busan.
You were trying to whisper something to me before I kept going.
It was gonna be the whole Stay Holy, but like we hadn't even done the whole.
You were really trying to
thing
get out
yet,
of here.
so-
Jeffrey's like, F these people.
No,
I
no,
want to
no,
go to bed.
no. We're gonna cut what I'm about to say right now. Train to Busan. That's a little treat for the autists out there. Trains. They like
Oh.
trains. We're not. That's not. I'm saying that as a joke, but like that's not gonna be kept in.
Saying it's a joke just to me.
Guys, I'm probably autistic. I'm probably autistic, folks. I want to preface.
Jeffrey just has rooms full of trains. My uncle has a room full of trains. Not saying he's autistic, just he really, really likes model trains. He has like a huge room with probably thousands of like nice model trains. So
I don't know. That sounds pretty autistic.
he's a doctor. So I mean, maybe.
But anyway. Again, we're probably going to censor a good bit of that. Anyway, you can find us at the Holy Moment Podcast at gmail.com. If you want to email us, please do. We want to talk to you. You can find us also on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok for our reels, but also our long form content is on YouTube and Spotify. So without further ado, we shall close this podcast.
The only way Jeffrey knows how.
Have a nice day and stay holy.
You know, what if people don't want to stay holy?
This isn't the podcast for them.
All right. I'm stopping.